Purpose of education. What I think the purpose of education is, it was, well, like, to learn. And I'm going to tell you that's not what happens in my classroom. At least not with the system we have. We don't really focus much on English in English. We focus more on literature, which is all fine and good until people start to write things in English. In my grade 11 English class, only about 10% of us know basic grammar. And in my science class, almost none of us remembered anything from grade 9 science or grade 10 science. So we struggled to remember anything about chemistry, biology, electronics, and we had to learn it all over again because none of it stuck with us. So we didn't really learn anything. And that, I think, is a failure to the system that I think needs to change. In my experience being taught by others, I think teaching should be done flexibly, not sternly to certain laws. Because not everybody learns the same, so people must teach differently too. People need to stop with these really difficult and annoying things like unwavering schedules of just things to teach people. Well, it's all good to have a plan. You know what happens when plan meets the enemy. It completely blows up in your face. That's why I think what happens to teachers most of the day. Because I don't think people really get what teachers are telling them. Like, if you go into any math class and you aren't deluding yourself, you will see that everybody there won't know anything by the end of the next semester. They will forget everything unless you've spent an obscene amount of time just on one subject. This isn't because I'm a bad student. It's because, and it's not because the teachers are bad. I just think that making us learn something so arbitrarily is just broken to the point where you can't really take anything from the lesson because everyone knows for a fact that we can't take it, right? We can't just sit there and be given these hypothetical questions like, Mr. Jimmy went down to the mall, he bought 5 apples, he arranged those apples into a triangle, please tell us the Pythagorean theorem of this triangle. Like, really? Teaching, looks like to me, would be like a teacher with everybody in the class paying attention and not just talking. The teacher should be teaching things relevantly and enthusiastically and not telling us like degrading facts of life all the time that, you know, I experience with my teachers sometimes. Like, my math teacher in grade 9, he told us that we wouldn't need any of this at all later in the beginning of the year. So no one bothered to even do anything with it. I still did it because, you know, I need marks and I kind of wanted to get into academia. What I think it means to learn is that you have to take something, maybe something you're passionate in, maybe something that you want to learn so you can survive, to absorb that into your mind and recall upon it easily enough that you would be able to use it practically in real life. I think learning means to me is that learning should all be about doing things that you want to do, right? Like, meaning to me, right?
Yeah, what does learning mean to you?
Learning means to me, like I was talking with that man, he's both learning something from both the teachers, but he's not really learning. He's just absorbing information in one ear and out the next. That needs to change because that's the problem both teachers have. Unfortunately, this comes with the environment of a school, I think. So, what we do need to do is we should make learning not about getting money or getting jobs or getting, better in society. And we need to change the fact that what school looks upon, which would be, outlook of school, like the completely wavering bar that's school and it's work. People aren't bars. People are flexible and they're unique. They can't just be all shifted off in one category where you have a bag of apples, say, and you look closely in apples and say, hey, there's all bruises on the apples. That's kind of a bad analogy. But that's kind of what a classroom is. You got a bunch of apples, but they're all different. Like, say you got a green apple, a purple apple, a red apple, but you can't just say and lump them onto one group and say, oh, they're just apples, right? You have to say that they're green apples, they're red apples. When I hear people say that they're learning something, I actually doubt they're learning something. Because most of the time, when people go to learn something on their own, they're virtually unprepared and overwhelmed in the first minute. And because they don't have someone to guide them along, like a teacher, they don't learn anything. But when you have a teacher, they don't reach their full potential of learning something. Because usually, when you're getting taught something in school, you get taught a certain amount of subjects. You have math, English, science, and whatever else. You can mix and match other classes, but they usually have to deal with those. So when you go out and say you're in English, half the time you're not learning English, you're learning Shakespeare. There's a difference between English and Shakespeare. I know that Shakespeare is part of our English culture and he's a respected figure, but reading books isn't going to help us write out stories and not write it out like essays or write out reports or learn how to use proper grammar. In fact, I think I learned more about the Odyssey than I did about English grammar and English sentence structure in my grade 9 math class. And I know that throughout grade 1, 8, you're supposed to learn the basic grammar, but people don't pay attention when they're kids that well. They have the attention span of a kid. So all that lessons that go into English and math and all the other subjects go when you're not together, as they don't really learn anything. What I think learning is when you can take something you're really passionate about and you start going into that passion. Like you take that passion and you turn it into something great. You can't just learn something you don't have a passion with. If you absolutely detest math, you cannot learn math because you hate it. That's like asking people who hate each other to go and shake hands and like hug it out without authority or anything. It's actually the truth in many cases with people that they refuse to learn math because they don't like it. And I know a lot of people will say, hey, grow up, you have to learn it because it's an important school. Oh, not important school, an important life lesson to learn to expand your brain. And the kids will say no because, well, they're kids like me who don't know any better. And if we did know better, we'd still hate math and we'd be forced to learn anyway. And that's such an inefficient thing to do that it's not worth doing. So what I think we gotta do is that maybe we should put less importance on mathematics to people that aren't passionate about mathematics, and less emphasis on reading books in English, and more emphasis on how to be, speaking English correctly, writing proper English, and so what all this boils down to is that I think that you have to be passionate in something to learn something. You can't just have a kid in a desk and stress them out to the point where, and tell them they have to learn something, and tell them they have to do something, and tell them and order them around, because that's just it's dumb. It's not well thought out. It's